go ahead and call the meeting to order here. It's the Norton Planning Board meeting of Tuesday, April the 15th, 2025. This is a hybrid public meeting, so members of the public are welcome to participate in person or remotely. In person, we are at Norton Town Hall at 72 East Main Street. The meeting is also available via Zoom with meeting ID 638-929-1060. There's also a dial-in number to dial by phone. The meeting will also be available on Norton Cable Access and on the Norton Media Center's YouTube page after the meeting's conclusion. For future sessions, please feel free to email questions for the board ahead of the meeting to Brian Carmichael, town staff, so they can be forwarded to the members and read prior to the meeting. So, with that out of the way, I'll call our meeting to order. We have 6 members here in person: Steve Warshall, Jim Arts, Laura Parker, Alan Boulay, and Eric Norris, and Rob Welch is joining remotely. For our agenda today, we do have some items for planning board business and policies and the minutes, but we'll save those for the end of the meeting here. I do want to start with a motion with an executive session here. Pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy relating to pending litigation known as Pacerna Home Builders LLC versus Griffin et al., Bristol Superior Court, 2473 CV 00396, declaring that discussing the matter in an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the board. A vote regarding whether to go into executive session is expected, and votes may occur during the executive session. So I'll just state for anybody watching that it's generally something that we try to take first on our agenda, with the expressed idea of getting town council out of the way first and letting them get on with the rest of their lives. Any further discussion prior to a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Motion to go to executive session.
Alan had the motion. Rob, is that a second? Okay.
And I've sent a new link. I've sent a new link out to you, Robin and Robin.
Okay.
Thank you.
Eric, I hear you're not muted just for.
Oh, they sent me the wrong one, Joe.
Yeah, she gave us the same link for both.
Okay. So we'll go through the roll here to go into executive session. We will return back to open session after the conclusion. So Steve, I'll start with you.
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Laura,
Yes.
Alan,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
and I will vote yes. So we'll reconvene in the meeting room here at Town Hall and virtually for everybody, for Town Council, and we'll return shortly. Thank you. Okay, thank you everybody. The board's now returning from its executive session and resuming with the rest of our open session this evening for our April 15th meeting. I'm just going to give 1 second for our remote member to rejoin the meeting here, and then we'll get going. The wonders of technology. Okay.
What you're looking for? Right here.
Okay, perfect.
We were just
I didn't
getting
see it
back in
on the screen,
ourselves.
Rob, so no worries.
Okay.
Hey Rob, how you doing?
Okay. So
Fantastic.
the next item on our agenda, we have 2 related items here. We have an A&R and a continued special permit and site plan discussion for 225 South Worcester Street. This is a project that we originally heard on March the 25th. So in terms of sequencing with these, I think it's appropriate for the board to take them both together, hear the discussion for the project as a whole, and then we can vote on the A&R first, and then the special permit site plan review second, as appropriate. Any discussion? That makes sense to everybody? Okay. So I'll ask if the applicant would like to just come forward and give an update on the proposal and changes from our last session here. And Paul, I don't know if you want to pull up just the updates here as the applicant goes through the requests here.
Sure.
I don't know if you want to start with the A&R, since that's, you can kind of explain that, and then.
Yeah, however you wanna, we're taking them both together, so
Okay.
however you wanna lay out the narrative of what you're looking to do with the changes with the A and R as well as the updates to the proposal, we can discuss it all and then we can vote on the A and R first, and then incorporate that into the other decision.
Perfect, yeah, you answered my first question, if we can kind of talk about it all together, which is what we're doing.
That was the goal,
All right.
yes, otherwise we get into which one are we talking about
Right.
and.
Perfect, no, much easier, I appreciate that. So for the record, Ryan DeValley, Heritage Realty, applicant on the matter. I just wanted to start with a little bit, I've worked with Paul a lot over the last couple weeks on kind of dissecting this and putting it in a format with the input from the board that hopefully makes a lot of sense. So I just wanted to kind of state with a updated narrative of kind of where we're at, and then Peter can take over on obviously the technical questions and stuff. So coming out of the last meeting with working with Paul, what we decided is originally we put forth the common driveway special permit because we didn't really know with the board what made the most sense for the kind of unique layout with the project, with the multiple lots, the two different zoning districts and everything. What we decided was to approach this with the A&R just to combine the 4 lots into one parcel, so that the frontage for the entire property was recognized with the frontage that we have on South Worcester Street, which is well in excess of the minimum required. In essence, if the board is receptive to how we're proposing things, the special permits and the site plan review would encompass the roadway approval. So in essence, we would be rescinding the common driveway application, and the roadway layout would be approved under the special permits and the site plan review. That's kind of the thought process there.
As a private way.
Correct. As a private way, which in the design, if we can pull up detail sheets as needed, but we haven't changed anything from the initial design of the roadway. It was designed to meet your roadway standards, not driveway standards. It was never 18 feet or 20 feet. It's 24 feet of pavement, sidewalks one side, a cul-de-sac, which a couple other sheets we can bring up, maybe as Peter goes through things later. We did a whole fire department turning radius that shows the biggest apparatus that they have, sent through the fire department, working through the roadway, and we got responses back that they're satisfied with all that. So that's just as far as the roadway design standards. A couple other milestones I can mention that we went through over the last couple weeks. There was a lot of discussion about the landscape layout, meeting site plan review standards, and then also relative to the abutters. We did do a landscape plan with a landscape architect, paid specific attention to the couple residential properties that were neighboring, and did a large amount of evergreen plantings to do some screening there. Happy to hear any input on those as we go through it, as well as the street trees and other requirements. Same thing with the lighting design plan, similar there. I think the screening and the landscape plan is much more important as far as the abutters go and everything. But there was a full lighting plan done, so the lighting, we have no washing over onto the other properties. It's contained on the property. And I'll kind of close with one of our other big things. We did have conservation last night. The stormwater came back with a clean bill of health. That's all 100% through the consultant engineer review. And conservation was basically ready to issue order of conditions last night. We asked them to keep it open just because we knew we had planning board tonight in case there were any tweaks or changes. But conservation, and Paul can echo that, is also.
I can confirm that. I spoke with Conservation Director John Thomas this morning.
Okay. I know it's open things with multiple boards, it's often okay, who's gonna approve it first and who's
Yeah.
conditioning on the
Chicken
other
and
one's
the egg,
approval,
yeah,
and
right.
yes.
So we basically do have conservation done, but we left it open to allow planning board to have your say on things, and then we can handle both together. So, I'll take any questions, but technical things I'll certainly turn over to Peter, so.
Okay. I know we have the A&R plan up here. I'm not sure if it makes sense to look at the plan with the duplexes and the rest of the properties on the site, just to kind of get a picture of it. The A&R is just changing the lot lines. It doesn't necessarily touch on the actual development that's gonna happen on the site. So just to make sure that everybody's thinking about this in the right frame of mind, and if we wanna take a look as we scroll through that map, just gonna mention the landscape and the landscaping and lighting plans. Especially the landscaping plan we wanna take a look at, since that was something that we specifically talked about at our last session. So we'll just pull it up here in terms of initial questions from the board, anything specific, based on the initial intro here from the applicant.
So the special permits for this would be duplex and cluster development. Is that correct?
And wetland protection.
And the wetland protection.
The roadway length, was that a waiver situation or is it within standards?
It's slightly over the 1,000 square feet. If the board would like to do it as a waiver, I think it's under site plan review, not subdivision control. So I think it's with your authority, if you're granting it, it's kind of the waiver sort of implied. I don't think it needs to be, but I don't wanna be the procedural person to say that.
And this is,
If it's out of the spec, then it would make sense for it to be a waiver, I
And
would
it's-
agree.
What's the exact distance, do you know? It's around
1260.
1260, it's only slightly, right?
and this is no individual lots, it's not a subdivision, it's a cluster, right?
It's a cluster, yep, and the duplexes in the village commercial, it will all be privately held. As we discussed last time, I anticipate and welcome the condition of the condominium documents, the HOA docs, to be fully vetted by the board, or, staff and town council at some point in the future. That's all understood.
And so how do we work with where it is a split district? Cluster development's allowed in the R60,
Mhm.
but it's not allowed in the village commercial.
Mhm.
The majority of this project takes place in village commercial. It enters through village commercial. Are we applying the cluster from the residential side? And,
No.
and saying that allows it to cross that whole,
Paul, did you wanna speak to, just from your perspective on,
Right, so I did speak with town council about this, and she did say it's not an issue if it crosses multiple zoning districts, so the special permit would be specifically for clustering in the R60 portion of it.
okay, but did she take notice that cluster developments are explicitly not allowed in village commercial?
We're applying it where the duplex special permit in the village commercial, and then what triggers is the lot coverage, which we're allowed up to 50% lot coverage, and we're at about 11 or 12%. So well below that, and where village commercial allows, multiple principal uses, that's what we're applying. So that's why the 2 special permits, and then collectively, they're all able to be on the 1 private lot, which is why we presented it that way with the site plan.
So, I understand what you're saying, but for the board's technical understanding. So going forward, any village commercial lot could, in essence, become a cluster development? If we
Well-
allow this one, that means any village commercial lot could add as many houses as they can fit?
well, this one does have R60 in it. So that, I think, is the delineation there. If it was pure village commercial, I don't think that would
But,
make sense at all.
but he is saying he's not using the cluster for the village commercial, he's saying it's because of village commercial standards that he's allowed to do this. He's saying village commercial standards alone is what allows him to put something of 15 or whatever duplexes in the village commercial side? And
Yeah,
that the
I think
cluster is only
11 in the village commercial, and again, it's a unique project, with the split zoning, and I think that makes it unique. And so we're trying to work with the circumstances we have in the zoning as we understand it, and this is why we, combined everything together as one lot and are presenting it this way. And I think it works, and I don't think it applies to every other property you might have in town. Every other property is gonna have their own unique set of circumstances also, so.
But either you're trying to convince me that either all of the units that are in the village commercial side are allowed by village commercial's description, or that the cluster development is allowing you to do it. It's not both. As I see it, cluster developments are not allowed in village commercial. If we as a board agree that 15 units and a meandering road count in any village commercial by its own standards, that's the standard for all village commercial going forward from now on.
Okay, I think I understand what you're saying, is that what you're looking for is the units that are in the village commercial, so closest to the road, need to stand on their own with the village commercial zoning, is that
I believe
a
so.
correct paraphrase?
I believe they are supposed to be meant as some sort of plaza or entity if it's multiple buildings, not necessarily specifically a residential cluster development. There's no other way to describe what that is except for that's what it is. And it's explicitly not allowed in village commercial.
Okay. Other comments from the board here? Obviously, this is a complex zoning issue.
I'm not sure if we are hold to the standard of like a court, that if once we make a decision that it becomes precedent. I don't believe that's the case, but it is.
It's gonna,
Sure does appear to be the case, and it sure does appear to set the precedent.
right. And the state's gonna look at that going forward in terms of applicants' legal standing to appeal. Sorry.
Sorry. Laura, I don't think we heard that on the Zoom from the
Yeah,
microphone.
sorry.
so-
I'm concerned about, it doesn't set precedent for us, but in the eyes of the court, does it? Meaning, does an applicant then have legal standing to sue us if we don't allow a cluster in village commercial on another development?
Okay.
I think we're exposed if we did that.
I think we wanted a more clarification from town council than what we got.
Yeah,
I think for
it's,
the brief statement that I read, I was just expecting more because this seems more complicated to me.
it was sort of non-committal. Yeah, it sounds okay.
I mean, from how we designed this, I mean, if we carve these up into, you know, still under special permit but multifamily lots, I mean, we could jam a lot more density in, and you know, townhouses with 6-unit buildings, 8-unit buildings, multiple lots. From reading through the zoning, I don't think.
You can't because it's a wetland protection district, which only allows for single-family housing.
It doesn't. The special permit allows for any allowed use.
If we
and-
grant it,
Right, right. But any allowed use, as long as we meet the criteria and satisfy Board of Health and conservation, which we have, those uses are allowed because they're a special permit, but they are allowed uses. So,
all right.
and even top of the shop, which is a by right use.
Yeah.
If we did, you know, again, speaking to that, there was a concern about the abutters and residential uses. I mean, we could put lots of density with commercial buildings and residential above it and all sorts of things. I think this is a lot less impact and a lot less density than even what could be done by right. I think the cluster not necessarily being in the zoning for village commercial is because the density is already allowed to go up to 50% coverage. It's not, the cluster is more thought of in the residential zones, so it wasn't really thought of in the village commercial, and we're not presenting it as a cluster. It may look like one, but we're presenting it under the special permit duplexes, multiple uses, which is allowable. So, and I've been on some other boards and everything, and most boards that I've listened to, every project is unique, and you don't necessarily set precedent by any particular project. If we didn't have the split zone in this, we would be presenting something possibly different, but would meet that zoning requirement. We're kind of bouncing between the two and trying to put something that's cohesive and from a planning standpoint makes sense. That's at least how I was looking at it when we tried to develop it.
I still think if someone comes back and says, well, you allowed it on village commercial here, the fact that they don't say split zone, they're gonna go, this lot here was village commercial. And you allowed it, so I do think we're exposed. I think what we're saying here is the reason why that Magnon matter would not stand up in our defense if we were being pressed on.
But also, I will state that that's one of the main reasons that from the beginning, I always planned on keeping the road private. I think if you were looking at it of trying to make a public roadway, you know, cluster type project and everything, but it was always intended to be private with the shared septic system and everything else. That also is you know, makes the project unique in that sense that we're stating right at the beginning, we're keeping it all private road.
If it was a public road, each lot, well, it'd be individual lots and they would all need frontage. It wouldn't be designed in this manner.
Right, but you could do a cluster with individual lots, I believe. I don't know if I don't have it in front of me, I don't know if clusters are all required to be private or not, but.
Generally, we have started, since the town would have to accept the road,
Mhm.
generally we have required that they are private until sometimes they're not.
Gotcha.
In those cases, there does need to be a condominium association or some other body that governs it and maintains it. In this case, you already would have that with the existing association.
Correct.
But that's generally, if you build it so the town may accept it in the future, but until that time, you have to make sure that there's a plan to maintain it in theory.
Mhm.
So. Additional questions for the applicant here about the update? I was gonna say, if we wanted to shift to maybe look at the landscaping plan here, just to, for a variety, unless somebody else had anything further. Rob, did you have an additional comment?
No, I'm good. My hand's on it. Okay. Sorry.
Do we have is the landscaping on, where is that?
It should be at the end of the set, second from the end. Right there.
Okay, so there's the landscaping proposed. So we have plantings behind the existing residential uses, plantings behind those front two duplexes, and then those are street trees, I assume with the circles by the driveway there.
Correct.
Correct.
Are those added later in the process? I don't think they're almost hand-drawn. Or they may be hand-drawn.
They're just different species, I think, like each species has its own,
Like, yeah,
they're different, so.
And then the wetland area would be an existing buffer, because we're not disturbing that, so that would stay all tree.
off the back of the site essentially.
Well, right through the middle where the crossing is, you can see the wetland flags that go back towards South
Gotcha.
Worcester Street. That'll stay undisturbed, so there'll be a big, not a big, a wooded area right there.
I'll just say, I think you came across on the Zoom, but just the microphone is what feeds into the mic, which goes into the.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
No, so I'll repeat. So where you see the crossing to the east towards South Worcester Street, that whole area there between the 25-foot no disturb on both sides, that will stay as a wooded area and undisturbed. That's why we don't propose anything in that location there. Just
Okay.
want to let you know.
And Paul, as part of this request, we're not being asked for any landscape waivers at this time.
No.
I know sometimes our landscaping requirements are intense, so just wanted to check.
I think I might have been the one that brought up the landscape, and I'm
I
pleased.
think I
that-
did at
Oh,
one point
well,
too.
I
Yeah.
can't remember. But I'm pleased that they took our feedback and ran with it and added what they did.
Well, I mean, the landscaping plan is a requirement of the application, so.
Correct. But I also said heavy screening
Yeah. No,
to
that
the
makes sense.
residential. That's what they did.
Yeah, and the commercial buildings in between there have I think they have a vinyl fence in the back anyway, with trees behind them, so. Into that wetland area behind, I think that's the pool building.
Correct.
So additional questions, comments?
So,
If we wanna go back to the zoning discussion, we can. I was just trying to change the
Yeah,
Get anything else out of the way that we wanted to talk through with this application?
I think I've worked myself around into a logical spot, and I'm just gonna specify that I'm not generally a fan of multifamily in the wetland protection. We have denied a special permit for that previously. However, in looking at the dimensional requirements for single family and village commercial, it is only 18,000 square feet. So I don't see, they could probably achieve the same, if not more, if we asked for them to come back to do what was allowed by right in the Wetland Protection District, which is single family only. So that's kind of where I am, is I think this is, they're right, it probably is the better scenario.
Basically, from your view with the existing zoning, they could replace these with single families and get more development by
On
right.
18,000 square foot lots, yeah. Whereas if this was all R60, they'd need a 60,000 foot lot. They could cluster it if we allowed them to cluster it. But the R60 is a very small portion.
Well, it goes all the way to the back, but they can't touch some of it, so.
Oh, is that why?
Yeah.
I couldn't quite figure out.
I did,
There's a
On the-
whole tail of the property that goes back.
On
Yeah.
the video, it was looking at the board, and he was pointing out specific things on that screen, which the video wasn't picking up, so I was kind of going by.
And that'll be
Yeah.
part of their
General.
open space.
Yeah. And he's there, the intent is to donate the rest of the land?
whatever the process is, it could be held by the homeowners association with a permanent restriction. It could be donated if that's the preference. We're fine with any of that.
Okay.
So Laura, there you see the tail there, that's more of a challenge to develop back there for sure.
Yeah, I did notice there was a lot of wetlands
A lot of
right
it's
there.
wetland that doesn't count towards the
Yeah.
calculation and everything anyway. And
But you
I
exceed, your upland area exceeded the 35%.
Correct.
Pretty
Yeah.
extensively,
I
actually.
appreciate you noticing too. I did choose this footprint of house because it is lesser impact. Obviously, I know there's some duplexes being built around town that are a much larger footprint, much larger space, can get a higher dollar value. We purposely tried to keep these compact, kind of in the spirit of a walkable, tighter community, less impact environmentally. And to
Remind
keep
me
it
of the number of bedrooms, please, sorry.
3 bedrooms
Okay.
each unit. Yep. To try to keep it, unit for unit, essentially, if we did a different layout with multifamilies or even single family houses, that it's relatively representative with, around what we would be anyway, just in a little bit of a different layout that I think is better receptive to the market and to the town and to the environmental impact.
And with all these, I think we may have covered this before, Paul, but is there a proposal for affordability on the project?
It doesn't,
Doesn't
no,
qualify?
because this is not multifamily. So
Okay.
that provision only triggers when you have 3 or multifamily development. Not multi-unit, but multifamily, so that would be anything, 3 or more units, and these are duplexes, so duplexes are not considered multifamily by our bylaw.
Even though it's a bunch of duplexes on one lot in theory.
Separately and related, though, I know it came up at the last meeting too about some of your special permit language about, on-site and off-site improvements and things of that nature. I'm a pretty reasonable developer. If the board, understanding that this is a special permit, they're not by right uses. If the board has some suggestions on what they'd be comfortable with to see on this project related to off-site improvements, considerations of affordability or things of that nature, even if not required, I'm the type of developer who likes to have a back and forth kind of dialogue, and I'm, interested to hear what the board's take on any of that would be, if that would, help the process, make this project a little bit more unique. I went on satellite myself and looked at the sidewalks going all the way up to the railroad tracks from the property, because it came up at the last meeting, so I looked at that. If there's anything that the board has that would be a consideration, I'll entertain anything that anyone would like like to propose.
From there to the tracks is probably the best portion of sidewalk on that side of the road for a quarter of a mile or probably more.
Heard, but just
Yeah.
just a general point, you know?
No, I appreciate it. I think I was more just making sure that we've had a lot of affordable housing discussion recently, if you may have noticed. So just making sure that we're, if there are points that we need to incorporate in this discussion, that we do so.
Sure.
But thank you.
There's another clarification on the paperwork. It says multifamily. Is that what's being applied for on the paperwork?
Our paperwork shouldn't say have any multifamily.
It still does. It should have said duplex.
Okay, that's just a clerical error then.
Okay.
Yeah, just say, right on the plan that's on the screen there, in the third
Special
box.
permit, site plan.
Special
for
permit site plan
multi-
for multifamily residential development plan.
Clerical error, I will have to update that.
Everywhere except on the title, on the template. Those templates are stubborn. Okay.
I was trying to wonder if there was some sort of loophole where all of the duplexes were considered one singularly owned multifamily spread throughout multiple buildings, like an apartment complex, but only 2 units per apartment building. But they'd have to be held under like single ownership, not condos. To be
Yeah, I don't
apartment.
think that they would. Yeah, I think multifamily, according to our existing definitions, is 3 units in one building.
3 or more.
But it
Okay,
doesn't
in
necessarily consider lots of twos
Okay,
as a multifamily kind of
It
use.
doesn't.
so you could do 6 units in 2 separate 3-unit buildings, but not 2-unit buildings.
If they were 3-unit buildings, they would trigger as multifamily, yeah.
So just for clarification, in case the board is interested in this, if we were to ask if we could condition 10% affordable, would that be amenable?
I'd consider it.
Okay.
If that's because of the uniqueness of the situation and if the board felt like that's what was needed to condition the project, I would definitely consider that.
Thank you.
Brian, you just scan back to a sheet that shows all the duplexes and
The next sheet.
and the road there, whichever.
Unless that's too small scale.
I think,
You wanna go back to the first one I showed you?
yes, please. Yeah, I know you mentioned you went through with fire department, that works. You went through the fire department, I saw we have the turning radius on this plan as well, so that makes sense from a fire approval perspective. Additional comments, questions for the applicant here? Otherwise, this is a public hearing. I'll just make the call to see if there's anybody joining us in person or remotely who'd like to make a comment from members of the public. And I'll ramble here for 20 seconds or so in case anybody on the Zoom meeting needs to find the mute button here. Just to make sure that anybody who wants to speak has the opportunity to do so. Not seeing a rush to the microphones virtually or in person here. So I'll come back to the board in terms of additional comments, questions.
Do you want to just pull the A&R plan up since that'll be probably the first motion?
Sure, the A&R plan is take these lot lines and erase them.
Correct.
But yeah, I think, Paul, it may be helpful just to organize the different decisions that we're gonna have to make here, because I think there's probably 5, if I can count.
There will be. So there'll be the A&R,
Yeah,
and then we have the special permits for duplex and village commercial in R60, the residential cluster in R60, the wetland protection district, and the site plan.
And the wetland protected is for duplexes in the wetland protection district or wetland protection district in general? Or
In
is it
general,
joined?
but you have to determine, is that use, is a duplex acceptable in this, as it is allowed as a, by special permit, but then determine, is that a use that would have an adverse impact on the wetland resource?
Okay,
I got a technical there. If the duplexes within the village commercial are not being considered as part of a cluster, do they all need their own individual special permit? As if they were individual primary uses, principal uses? Each one's being considered as its own individual principal use, no?
Individual vote? I wouldn't think so. I mean, I guess whatever your vote is, it's going to be on, it would be applicable to everything.
I haven't
your
encountered that.
perspective is it would be fine to make a motion for duplexes in the village commercial. And it would accompany all of the ones that are currently cited in the village commercial district on plans.
So you could break it out to say,
Rather than
split
say
your
for
vote
duplex
for
one, for duplex two, for duplex four.
Right,
Okay.
right. And you could break out your vote to have it for duplex and village commercial and a separate vote for duplex and R60.
Okay. Okay, but I think it will probably help as we get into this, just to, understand what sequence we need to take them all in, because there's a lot.
I would start with A and R first.
Yeah.
Because that's, the frontage hinges on that approval.
Yeah, I guess I would, before we do that, I think my perspective would be, and this is a question for the applicant, if you have a preference one way or the other. If we vote on the A and R and we sign the A and R following the meeting, and the decision for the later decisions is not in favor of the special permits, does that A and R become something you don't like?
Not necessarily something I don't like, but if it would make sense for that to be last based on your question, if that answers your question, because we're only doing the A&R because of this format.
Right.
We would,
I was gonna suggest something like say a straw poll. If we're in favor of moving forward with this on the special permits in general, then let's take the A&R first so we have the frontage kind of procedural.
fair enough, I would agree with that.
Does that make sense for everybody? Just to kind of make sure that we're all on the same page here, we'll do just kind of, we don't need to do, this isn't a formal vote, but just say whether we think that we would approve the special permits and the other application in front of us, and then we could proceed in the A&R in that way,
I'm fine with it.
okay? So Alan, yes, Laura, yes, Eric?
Yes.
Steve? No. Rob, do you feel like you're leaning one way or another here?
I'm leaning no, to be honest.
Okay. Yeah. And then, of course, would leave me as the deciding vote in terms of a special permit that needs a supermajority. Which is why I always end up going last.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah. I think at the initial discussion, I was leaning towards no, but I think I've moved toward yes, just in terms of looking at it from the what would you do by right perspective. So I think that's where I'm leaning with it as well.
That's what swayed me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's basically, what is the alternative? At this point, you're looking at the property, something's going to happen. What is going to happen here, and that's what we're making.
More
a vote on.
control over it this way.
Well, so,
How many single family homes could he put by right?
they'd only need 18,000 square feet per.
They still
Yeah.
need a subdivision approval, right?
I would assume yes.
They don't have the right to just fill that whole thing with single family homes. They have to meet a certain amount of requirements.
Right.
And it has to be individual lots. So
Yes.
so
Yeah. So we're making a decision here, yes, in that this is what the applicant has presented, and with the understanding that they could come back with just a single family subdivision and do essentially the same thing at a higher density potentially.
On 5 mostly dry acres.
So,
That's a lot of houses.
Especially with only 18,000 square feet.
Yep.
so I think we've gone through the straw poll here, and we kind of feel like we've got the 5 that we would need for a special permit. So I think order of operations here, we would, we can do the A&R by itself,
You wanna close the public
and then we
hearing
would close,
first?
the A&R doesn't need a public
Okay.
hearing close, but we could do that. So if somebody wants to make a motion to close the public hearing, we can. But the A&R can proceed without it. So, further comments, questions, otherwise I'd be looking for some kind of motion.
A motion to approve A&R 11.
Seconded.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve A&R 11. Any further discussion? Again, this is just the A&R, merging 4 lots into 1 lot. Okay, hearing no further discussion, as we have 1 member remote, I'll go through the roll for the vote here. Steve,
yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Laura,
Yes.
Alan,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Rob? No. And I'll vote yes. Do we have a Mylar or anything with us tonight, or? We do.
Peter
Okay.
has it.
Okay. We don't need to sign it now, we'll
Nope,
just
I'm
lay
just
it
gonna
out
get
on the table and, okay.
So I'd motion to
So-
close the public hearing for SP 19 and SPR 12.
Okay, we have a motion to close the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Before we do so, I'll just go to the applicant again and say, are you comfortable with closing the public hearing at this time? Is there anything else you wanted to say?
No, we're good.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second to close the public hearing. Any further discussion? Okay. Hearing none, closing the public hearing. Steve?
Yes.
Sorry. Jim?
Yes.
Laura?
Yes.
Alan?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. Sorry, Steve, I sprung that on
No,
that
it's
quickly. Okay. And so Paul, coming back to your list here. So, actually, before we do that, specific conditions that we want to include as part of these decisions.
Site plan review is the only one that I wrote down, was the waiver on the roadway length. Would the other conditions that we talked about go with the special permit? You want them all on everything, I guess is the question.
I think that makes sense on the site plan, I agree. Are there other conditions that we wanted to include other than our standard conditions? I know Laura, you asked the applicant about affordability, if we wanted to include that, or,
I'll ask the question, is that something the board would like to consider?
Yes.
I can't say no because they already said they were kind of in favor of it.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah. It only helps us
yeah,
keep up our stock.
Yeah.
yeah. Do you want to keep that as affordable, or include language? I know our standard affordable language also includes like payment in lieu and those kinds of things. So just the whole
I think
the whole
that,
continuum of those options?
yeah,
Or you're looking for
yeah,
units
ideally,
specifically to be affordable?
yeah, I'd like it to be affordable, but
Okay,
it's kind of their point of asking.
10%,
It's
so that would be
no
3
more than
units.
what we already require on a multifamily.
Alright, so that would be 3 units. That's 30 units.
Yes.
additional conditions that we wanted to discuss? they mentioned offsite mitigation, anything like that, I think my view is that the affordability is kind of what we're accepting instead of anything like that in terms of sidewalks or something like that. Obviously, it's not, we can, if there are additional conditions that we want to add, that's our discretion, but
Does that tie in more with the wetland protection district also?
in terms
Offering.
of,
What you just said? I'm just trying to remember back to the bylaw of,
Oh, sorry.
go ahead.
No, I just thought of something. I want to put the conditions that we did on Zero Reservoir with regards to insecticides, fertilizer,
because it's.
Snow.
Because it's abutting the
because
wetlands.
because it's the wetland protection district. Yes, and its location.
Okay.
So
General idea is the conditions are, don't put bad stuff in the wetlands.
yes, please,
Okay.
and make sure it's part of the homeowners association. So not in any of the common.
And in general, I think with the cluster, there's requirements for us to have the condo docs and everything else as
Yes.
part of the process. So that doesn't need to be a specific condition, it's just,
We'll have
it goes without
conditions,
saying.
we
Or
have
is it
conditions
just-
that we'll put in there that require certain documentation to ensure, to identify the ownership and maintenance of the open space.
And the private way, and the culvert,
We will add that too.
okay.
I'll add that.
Yeah, operation and maintenance of the
Yeah.
private way.
Okay. Anything else that we wanted to do in terms of conditions? Other than that, I'll ask Paul to actually say what I asked him to start a few minutes ago.
Okay.
So the first vote that we would be looking to do here, Paul, would be,
You can do the special permit for duplex in village commercial and R60 unless you want to take that separate.
let's take them as one for each zone,
Okay,
if nobody has any objection to that.
so the special permit approval criteria is your general, which, socially and economically desirable, satisfy an existing need, advantages outweigh by far the detrimental effects, that such effects on the neighborhood and environment shall not be significantly greater than could be expected from development if the permit or special permit were denied, that the applicant has no reasonable alternative available to accomplish this purpose, and that specific conditions to minimize detrimental effects and protect the neighborhood have been imposed and if necessary secured by bond or otherwise.
Okay. So I had suggested one vote on special permit for the zone, for each zone, so that'd be two. For the duplexes, one in village commercial and one in the R60.
So I'll make a motion to approve the duplex use in the village commercial zone in regards to SP 19.
Seconded.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion on that motion? Okay. Hearing no further discussion, I'll go through the roll here. Steve, I'll start with you.
No.
Jim,
Yes.
Laura,
Yes.
Alan,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Rob,
No.
and I would vote yes.
Say motion to allow duplex use in R60 for SP 19.
Seconded.
Okay, we have a motion and a second by Alan and Eric. Any further discussion on that motion? Okay. Hearing none, I'll go through that whole sequence again. Steve,
No.
Jim,
Yes.
Laura,
Yes.
Alan,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Rob,
No.
and I will vote yes.
So I think the next one would be a motion to approve a cluster development in R60
Correct.
for SP 19.
Seconded.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Alan and Eric again. Any further discussion on that motion? Okay. Hearing no further discussion, Steve, I'll start with you again.
No.
Jim,
Yes.
Laura,
Yes.
Alan,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Rob? No. And I'll vote yes.
I think the next one's gonna be, to allow duplex use in the water protection, wetland protection district.
Correct.
Seconded.
Okay, thank you, Alan and Eric, for the motion and the second again. Any further discussion on this motion? Hearing none. Steve?
No.
Jim?
Yes.
Laura?
Yes.
Alan?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Rob? No. And I'll vote yes.
Final will be to approve SPR 12 with standard conditions and the waiver on roadway length.
Seconded.
Anything further on that motion? We have a motion and a second. Anything further on that? Paul, do you think there are any other conditions specific to the site plan that we need to incorporate here?
No, I believe we have everything.
Any further discussion? Okay. Steve, I'll start with you again.
No.
Jim?
Yes.
Laura?
Yes.
Alan?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Rob? No. And I'll vote yes. Okay. And Paul, the next one?
That is it.
That is it, okay. I thought we had more coming. Okay.
Would you like me to make another motion?
I know which one I want you to make.
No,
Not
that's all.
yet. Okay. So that concludes our discussion on SPR 19 and SP 19, SPR 12, and the A&R 11. So before everybody leaves, we do have the A&R done by Brian, so we don't have to sign that now.
And Chair will like be bringing the decision back.
I think it probably makes sense, even though the board's composition will change, but
To just approve the final.
yeah. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night. Good luck at elections.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
No, we have more things to cover, so.
Okay.
Next item on our agenda is just two decisions from our last session.
Do we have to continue that other public hearing?
Thank you.
Want to do that?
Thank you, Paul. So we do have a continuance requested for 361 River Old Colony Road. That was for the garage trade service building with 12 parking spaces, which was continued a couple of times. So they're asking for continuance to our May the 6th session.
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the request to continue?
Are we particularly busy on the 6th? Because that'll be the first day we come back, right? After the elections.
I'm not gonna be busy.
I don't.
It won't be as busy as the last few meetings.
That is not a fair
That's-
comparison.
That's the best I have. Now,
So-
it's, you have also one Dean Street has been continued to that, and we have something else.
We have 0 South Washington.
That's right, 0 South Washington it will be here too.
Okay. So I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay. Hearing none, I'll reverse it this time. Rob, I'll ask you first.
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Alan,
Yes.
Laura,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
and I'll vote yes. To keep everybody guessing here. Okay, so that continued. We do have two draft decisions here just to review. One was 10 West Main Street, and one was 408 Old Colony Road. And we voted on those decisions at our last session, but just if there were any questions, comments, concerns about the drafts, Paul, did you want to make anything for it?
Laura gave me some comments, which I've included on a hard copy, but I can also pull those up if anyone wants to go through either of the decisions. But they were pretty standard. I mean, the marijuana, I pulled conditions from the CANA special permit. And then with 10 West Main Street, we've got some conditions in there for affordability that are pretty standard. Do bear in mind, that's actually going to the Historic District Commission on Thursday. So we did put, provisions in there that this doesn't go into effect until the Historic District Commission approves it.
And they said if the HDC does not, then they're coming back to us, and they knew that. So.
Right.
Okay. Laura, did you want to do just a summary of what you had added, or anything specific, or not ask me to pull up a track file, but just in terms of?
No, most of it was technical. It was like they forgot to put square feet after the number.
Okay.
There was nothing material in there at all.
Okay.
One thing. I added under board discussion was guest parking. There were questions about guest parking that wasn't included within that section. That was literally technical. So that's
Just
it.
in terms of that initial
was discussed.
handshake of what did we talk about at the meetings?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So, anything further on these decisions? Otherwise, we can consider them approved and they can be signed and move forward. Okay. Okay. So with that, we'll go back up to our general business here, planning board business and policies. Paul, is there anything that you wanted to just discuss with the group here in terms of other committees or anything that are discussing anything that we've worked on, or?
Yeah, we actually had a meeting last night with Finance Committee. They did vote in support of your recommendations for both the MBTA and the recodification. Recodification was unanimous. There were, I think there were 3 or 4 dissents with MBTA, but the majority still voted for it. And
7-3.
it was 7-3, okay. And then Thursday night, Select Board is scheduled to review those 2 items as well.
Okay.
And again, never mind, that's it. And then May 19th is the town meeting.
Yes. Okay.
There's only a couple articles.
Well, we have the first one, then we have to wait a little while, right?
Probably till the next day. Just kidding, hopefully not kidding.
Okay.
Hopefully just kidding, I should say.
Okay. So the last thing that we had on our agenda this evening was approval of minutes, I believe. Prior, other than a couple of housekeeping things to close the evening. So a few weeks ago, I think we had 2 sets of minutes that there was a bit of confusion on just the dates and the file names. I think we cleared that up, correct? And then we had 5 sets of minutes that we had originally said we would take on the first, and we pushed that, and then we decided it made more sense to cover those this evening. So I would generally think that we would go oldest first. Was it the 9-10 ones that we thought were the conflict? Was that the, Brian, were those the 2 that we needed to resolve?
One of them was September, and we had stopped in October.
Right, I think that the 2 that are dated on 9-10 was the question that we stopped on the 25th, correct?
Yeah, that was 9/10.
So 1 I assume is the 10th and 1 is like 9/24, correct? That's just the file naming was the question, correct? Okay. So, look to go through these if we have any questions, comments.
Review them, okay.
Motion to approve the minutes of 9/10/2024.
Seconded.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, we will go through the roll for all of these. Sorry, everybody. Steve, I'll start with you.
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Laura,
Yes.
Alan,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
and I will vote yes.
Motion to approve the minutes of September 24th, 2024.
Seconded.
Thank you for the motion and the second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Steve?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Laura?
Yes.
Alan?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
And I will vote yes.
Motion to approve the minutes for October 15th, 2024.
Seconded.
Hold on, October 15th?
Sorry, October 8th, we'll go. I was just going down the list.
Seconded.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for October the 8th. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Steve?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Laura?
Yes.
Alan?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
And I will vote yes. Next, we have the 21st of October. These are the ones that we originally scheduled to take on the 1st. So we have a motion.
Motion to approve?
Seconded.
I'm just not seeing it on Brian's list. I was just going down Brian's list.
You're not seeing it?
Well, I was just going on the latest list that Brian sent out.
Yeah, I got one date wrong, and so I corrected it.
Okay,
But
let's
that
just,
was in the new list.
You can catch something there.
okay, got it. So this is,
It's the same thing, it's just I got the date wrong.
okay, got it.
So 15th is the next one?
So take the document 10, 15, 24, is that your?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Steve, I'll start with you.
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Laura,
Yes.
Alan,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
and I will vote yes as well. 5 more, everybody. Next is
Yes,
1029.
Yes, yes, yes.
So moved.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, we have a motion and a second from Alan and Eric. Not quite there, Rob. And we do have 2 more things to do after this too. Quick ones, but. So, Steve, I'll start with you again.
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Laura,
Yes.
Alan,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
and I will vote yes.
Motion.
Next is November the 12th, sequentially.
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay, thank you, Alan and Eric. Any further discussion on November the 12th? Hearing none. Steve, I'll start with you again.
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Laura,
Yes.
Alan,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
and I will vote yes. Next we have November the 19th.
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay. Hearing no further discussion, I'll go through the roll. Steve,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Laura,
Yes.
Alan,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
and I will vote yes. And last but not least, we have December the 17th.
I got December 3rd on this list also.
We just did that one.
Oh, sorry. Wrong one.
So December the 17th.
You don't want to do it again?
No.
So moved on the 17th then.
Seconded.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Go through the roll one last time here. Steve,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Laura,
Yes.
Alan,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
and I will vote yes. And I think that concludes our catch-up of all of the minutes from when Brian was doing way too many things when Paul wasn't here. So thank you, everybody, for getting us through that long, tedious list. Paul disappeared on us?
It was all.
He disappeared on us.
Smart.
Okay. I think we have one other thing that Paul has that I'll let him cover. But before we adjourn this evening, I just wanted to mention that we do have the election coming up. Something that I wanted to say, just as we go into the new board, for everybody to say, I think I expressed this a year ago when we constituted this board. I'm generally not looking to be the chair after this election. So,
Make a motion.
so
Can I let my
I'm just gonna
motion be
state
made,
that
Tim?
out loud, so you guys can take that how you will.
Doesn't mean we can't nominate you.
I can always decline the nomination too,
Correct.
so that's a dangerous game. I'll turn around and nominate you. So, I think I've been the chair for almost 5 years at this point.
You're doing really good at it.
I think the quote I used a year ago was from Mark Twain. Politicians and diapers need to be changed often, and for the same reason. They're full of something. So I just wanted to say that before we adjourned, and then Paul, we had one additional thing here. We have one member who is leaving us here, so Jim, I want to give you a certificate of appreciation here for your service to the planning board over these last 3 years.
Thank you very much.
As you can see, we spared no expense on using a piece of paper from the copier,
Yeah.
but
Black and white even.
That just means you have to make
Looks better
the,
that much.
you have to make the last motion. That's what that paper means.
Oh, okay. Can I make said motion?
I have nothing else.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
Seconded.
Okay, we have a motion to adjourn. Anything further to discuss? Hearing none, I'll go through the roll one more time. Steve,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Laura,
Yes.
Alan,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
and I'll vote yes. We are adjourned, everybody. Thank you very much. Have a
Thank
good
you all very much. That was very nice.